Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinners here with another video, and it's time to get serious. Most of you guys know this is not a political channel and I've never really covered things, well, some sensitive topics, but most stuff that pertains to me personally. But there's something that just happened. There's actually two things that just happened that I found very, very important, and I feel like I would be being immoral if I didn't cover them at least a little bit. The first thing is that the Chinese government actually acknowledged the existence of the Tiananmen Square massacre. They call it an incident. It's not quite a massacre in their words, but I actually wasn't going to cover it. I wasn't going to talk about it. Winston actually had a really good video as to why he didn't cover it in the past, and we have the same reasoning as to why we didn't cover it. I was so shocked and appalled when CCP media outlets and stuff and people tweeting at me and, the mouthpiece of the government actually using me as political fodder in some of these messages and statements. I had to bring it up. So I want to read to you first what the Global Times, that actually is a mouthpiece of the Chinese government, actually said about the Tiananmen Square incident.
Now, actually, since filming this video, I've noticed that when you go to the link to the Global Times, where they actually acknowledge the Tiananmen Square incident, they have removed that link. They have removed that article and they've edited the tweet. But thankfully, I had actually saved the original text in anticipation of making this video. So here goes. June 4th marks the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square incident. The Communist Party of China and the Chinese government have determined the nature of the incident. Chinese society has also made a comprehensive summary of it. Dropping the incident thereafter has been aimed at helping the country leave the shadow behind, avoid disputes, and help all Chinese people face the future. We consider such practice a political success, although some people have criticized it from the perspective of news governance. Merely afflicting China once, the incident has not become a long-term nightmare for the country. Neither has the incident's anniversary ever been placed in the teeth of the storm. It has become a faded historical event rather than an actual entanglement. The Chinese government's control of the incident in 1989 has been a watershed, marking the differences between China and former Eastern European socialist countries, including the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. Since the incident, China has successfully become the world's second-largest economy with rapid improvement of people's living standards. The policy of avoiding arguing has served as a contributor to the country's economic takeoff. Today's China obviously has no political conditions to suddenly reproduce the riot of 30 years ago. Chinese society, including its intellectual elite, is now more mature than it was in 1989. In those years, China's reforms carried out prior to those of the Soviet Union and Eastern European countries. China was completely inexperienced, with an intellectual circle filled with idealism. Chinese society today has seen enough of the political tragedies that occurred in the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and some Arab countries. Having become politically mature, we now understand the significance of the country's continuous development through evolutions instead of revolutions. We are also aware of the difficulties and complexity at a practical level. As a vaccination for the Chinese society, the Tiananmen incident will greatly increase China's immunity against any major political turmoil in the future. We have noticed that every year around June 4th, certain forces outside of the Chinese mainland stir up public opinion and attack China. Such forces consist of two groups of people: student leaders and dissidents who fled abroad after 1989, and Western politicians and media outlets. The first group's understanding of the incident remains fixed in 1989. They refuse to correct their understanding of China's development and the changes that the world has been through. Their interests have been decoupled from the Chinese people who have merged with anti-China forces outside China. Their attitude towards the incident cannot represent those of today's Chinese public. Western politicians' discussions of the incident are mainly influenced by their country's relations with China. Due to the deterioration of China-U.S. ties, U.S. officials have launched fierce attacks against China that have focused on the incident since last year. But Chinese people are clear that those officials are not genuinely concerned about Chinese human rights, but are making use of the incident as a diplomatic tool to challenge China. However, all these noises will have no real impact on Chinese society. The actions of the external forces are completely in vain.
So to sum it up, basically the CCP and the Global Times are saying that the Tiananmen Square incident was a good thing. It's going to be a band-aid and a vaccine for all future problems that China has to deal with. And that shocked me to the core. And it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing not only to not acknowledge what's happened in the past and block all these things, block social media, and actually not get the message out there or allow people to get the message out there, but it's even more dangerous when you acknowledge this event and then you say it was necessary to crack down on thousands and thousands of innocent students that were mowed over in the Tiananmen Square massacre. And I'm seeing a huge parallel to something that's happening right now in Hong Kong. When China took back Hong Kong in 1997 from the UK, they were promised 50 years of autonomy, basically meaning the only thing that was allowed to be in Hong Kong from China was the army. They got to keep their judicial system, their freedom of speech, freedom of press, all this kind of stuff, and they still have a border with mainland China that exists today. Unfortunately, just like most things dealing with the Chinese political party, the CCP, these freedoms were quickly eroded and are being eroded. China has a massive foothold in the local government of Hong Kong. What's happened is that they're proposing a bill that would allow the extradition of not only foreigners, but Chinese people and Hong Kong people from Hong Kong into China to be tried in Beijing if they run afoul of the law in China. So basically that means that anybody who's a political dissident, someone who says anything bad about China, they can't be in the free judicial system of Hong Kong and express their concerns and express themselves. They can be locked up and then shipped off to mainland China to be tried very unfairly. China has a 99% conviction rate at the whims of the Chinese government. That is terrifying. And what that basically means is that if you, let's just say, make a YouTube video that pisses off the CCP and you go to Hong Kong to film or have a holiday, you can be shipped straight up north very quickly without any trial period. They're trying to make it so easy for anybody that runs afoul of the Chinese law to be tried in mainland China. And that's worrying. It's so worrying, in fact, that there's only about 7 million people in Hong Kong. More than 1 million Hong Kong people just took to the streets to oppose the extradition law. Now, this is interesting because if you do some math, it'd be like if 51 million Americans took to the streets in one day to protest a law. So that's a huge percentage of people that are obviously against it, and there's lots of people that are against it that didn't take to the streets or go to the protest. I got a lot of on-the-ground footage. Thank you to my friend that actually braved the storms there. But what's happening and what's scary is that they can't really pull another Tiananmen Square. They can't drive the tanks into the, into the actual streets and mow people down because it would be covered by foreign and domestic news. But what they can do is spin the story. So now the China Daily is saying that over 800,000 people took to the streets to go protest against the protesters that are against the extradition law. Now, immediately I kind of saw through this and I started digging around and actually saw on my WeChat moments and in WeChat posts that people were getting offered 500 Hong Kong dollars to go for the CCP into Hong Kong and stand up and hold up signs and kind of make a little bit of trouble and show that, no, people are pro-China in Hong Kong. This is absolutely insane to me, and it's just another way of covering it up. So we see the Tiananmen Square massacre finally gets acknowledged, but they say it's good. Then they start paying people in Hong Kong. And the reason that this is so important that Hong Kong doesn't pass this extradition law is that if it does get passed, and it looks like it's going to be passed, Hong Kong, once the hub of democracy and freedom and the financial powerhouse of Asia, will effectively become a mainland Chinese city. There will be no difference in the way things are run in Hong Kong if anyone that does something that the CCP declares illegal can get shipped to be tried in China. This is dangerous. You can't forget the past. Yet you choose never to forget the Nanjing massacre, an atrocity that Japan committed against China. Yet you won't admit the faults of your own government. And that leads to a dangerous future. Free Chinese people want a free country. They want a future for their country that they can rely on. It's not about politics, not about left or right. They just need a chance to speak. You can bring politics into something like this, but you can't effectively speak for 1.4 billion people on this topic. Religious or not, moral or not, you carry the moral weight on your shoulders when you speak for 1.4 billion people. You cannot speak for 你们所有的中国人. And you need to know this. There are millions and millions of Chinese people who would like to raise their fist, not in nationalist fervor, not to support the government, but to actually, stick up for their brothers and sisters who died in the march, who died in the protests, who lost their lives trying to fight for a free China. Keep in mind, the people that went out in the streets in Hong Kong and Tiananmen Square did so because they want a better future for their family. Doesn't everyone want that? And the soldiers that mowed them down, they did it for a meager paycheck, just like everyone else. People did what they said, but finally people are trying to stand up and actually make a difference. And I too have a family, and it worries me to talk about this kind of stuff. My heart is actually pounding because I've never actually had a chance to speak about what I thought about this, but it's my responsibility, at least when I know how things work in China, to actually talk about it. And I know that the thousands of people that died and had their blood and guts washed down the sewer system of Beijing didn't do so in vain. And they did it for you guys, and I'm speaking to China as a whole. So when you use language like the Tiananmen Square incident was a vaccine, that's powerful language, and it's disgusting language. And since I've started YouTube, and I think Winston would agree with me, we made it a goal of ours to speak for the people who can't speak and actually give a voice to the people that can't be heard abroad. Our goal was always to champion the everyday person in China, to give them a voice to speak. I am not a political dissident, but I will use my voice on YouTube to try, at least, to calm down some of the absolute hypocrisy that's coming out in these statements and what's happening right now in Hong Kong. In this world of political turmoil, which really basically boils down to red or blue like a football match, we have the responsibility to talk about right and wrong. The Chinese government has been so successful in suppressing any form of speech and shaping even the outside world's opinion of China. And China's a beautiful place with beautiful people, but you bear the moral responsibility when you direct a message at the entire world, speaking on behalf of every single person. We want to talk to Chinese people. The outside world wants to talk to you guys, but your government won't allow it. 我想跟你们讲. I want to talk to you. I've always allowed dissenting opinions on my channel. I want to have a conversation with you no matter what you think. If your country claims 5,000 years of history, then let the representatives of that actual history be the ones to speak, not the ones who destroyed all of it. Or you can continue silencing everyone's opinion. You can try to shut us down. You know, the people that dedicated their entire lives to trying to make other people realize that your country, China, is not only human, but beautiful, and could be potentially an amazing superpower full of hard work and creativity. We didn't do that in vain. So gloves off. I'm not in a fighting mood, so I'll just back into the corner of the ring while you throw punches and pretend to speak for over 1 billion people. I'll just be doing my best in the corner of said ring, and I'll just be trying to have a conversation with you guys. I don't care if you care about China or not. I do, and you should too. If you're a YouTuber with a conscience, you represent the people who can't talk. You represent the freedom of speech. We hate the crap out of each other sometimes, but there are 1.4 billion people that can't share their awesome opinion with us. We can't let a fifth of the world's population not join that conversation. That was hard to do. I appreciate you guys sticking through that video. I don't normally cover such serious topics, but I felt like I needed to get that off my chest. Don't forget that you can watch another Laowinners video if you want, right below here. You can watch me every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. EST. Over here, you can watch ADVChina every Monday at 1 p.m. EST. Right below that, you can check out Winston at 1 p.m. EST on Fridays, just in time for a beer. And don't forget, we also have our podcast every other Thursday, ADV Podcast. Go click in the middle here if you want to watch one of those. Thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.